Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Starbound, watching the endless stars through the large viewing window. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he did not notice. For 37 years, he had traveled between the stars, mapping new worlds and checking on distant colonies. In all that time, the most dangerous thing he had faced was a broken engine or a sick crew member. The galaxy had been peaceful for 6,000 years. Wars were something people read about in history books, not something they lived through. Why? Galactic Federation made sure of that. Representatives from over 200 species worked together to solve problems before they became fights. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Children grew up never knowing the fear of attack. Jake had been born on Earth in the year 8001. His parents were farmers who grew food for the orbital stations. His grandfather had been a teacher. His great-grandfather had been an artist. None of them had ever held a weapon or seen a battle. This was normal for humans and most other species in the Federation. The communication panel beeped 3 times. This was the emergency signal. Jake had heard it in training, but never in real service. He walked quickly to the panel and pressed the response button. "This is Captain Morrison of the Starbound. What is your emergency?" The voice that came through the speakers was shaking with fear. "Captain, this is Colony Base 7 in the Outer Rim. We need immediate help. Something is attacking our system. Ships like nothing we have ever seen. They are not responding to any communication attempts." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Slow down. Tell me exactly what you are seeing." 3 massive ships appeared near our outer planet 2 hours ago. They are dark gray, almost black. They have no Federation markings. When we tried to contact them, they began attacking our mining station. "The station is gone, Captain. Just gone. They did not destroy it. They took it apart piece by piece and sucked up all the metal and materials." The communication officer on Jake's bridge, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, looked up from her station with wide eyes. She had been listening to the emergency channel. "Captain, I am getting similar reports from 4 other systems in the Outer Rim. The same type of ships. The same attack pattern." Jake sat down heavily in his command chair. In 6,000 years of peace, the Federation had faced pirates, smugglers, and the occasional dispute between colonies. But organized attacks on multiple systems at the same time? This was something else entirely. "Get me Admiral Kate Sullivan at Federation Defense Command," Jake ordered. "Priority channel." It took 15 minutes to establish the connection. When Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen, Jake could see the worry in her eyes. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from years of making hard decisions. But today, she looked older than her 62 years. "Captain Morrison," she said without greeting. "I suppose you are calling about the attacks in the Outer Rim?" "Yes, Admiral. My communication officer is tracking reports from multiple systems. What exactly are we dealing with?" Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was grim. "We think they are called the Voidborn. They are machine intelligences that consume organic matter and raw materials to build more of themselves. According to our oldest records, they appeared once before, about 6,000 years ago, just before the Great Peace began." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "The records say they were destroyed. The records say they disappeared. Apparently, there is a difference." Admiral Sullivan rubbed her forehead. "Captain, I need you to return to Earth immediately. We are calling back all deep space vessels. The Federation Council is meeting in emergency session." "What about the colonies under attack?" "Our peacekeeping fleet is moving to help them, but..." Admiral Sullivan paused. "Our ships are designed for patrol work and rescue operations. We have not built true warships in 6,000 years. We are not prepared for this kind of threat." The connection ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He turned to his crew, all of whom had been listening to the conversation. They looked scared and confused. Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke first. "Captain, what are the Voidborn exactly?" Jake wished he had a better answer. "I do not know, Amy, but we are going to find out." He ordered his ship to change course for Earth at maximum speed. As they traveled through hyperspace, more reports came in. The attacks were spreading. Entire mining operations were being consumed. Orbital stations were being taken apart like toys. The attacking ship seemed to be learning and adapting with each engagement. The most disturbing reports came from the few survivors who had escaped the attacks. They described ships that moved like living things, changing shape as they fought. The Voidborn did not seem interested in conquest or territory. They wanted resources, and they took everything they could find. By the time the Starbound reached Earth's solar system, over 30 colonies had been attacked. The Federation's peacekeeping fleet had engaged the Voidborn twice and been defeated both times. The enemy ships were simply too advanced and too adaptable. Jake requested permission to land at the main spaceport in North America. As his ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, he looked down at the peaceful world below. Cities sparkled in the sunlight. Ships moved slowly between the orbital platforms. Everything looked normal and safe. But Jake knew that safety was about to end. After 6,000 years of peace, war had returned to the galaxy, and from what he had heard about the Voidborn, this war would be unlike anything the current generation had ever imagined. The question that troubled him most was simple. Could a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight learn to do so again before it was too late? As the Starbound touched down on the landing pad, Jake saw military vehicles surrounding the spaceport. Admiral Sullivan was taking no chances. The long peace was over, and nobody knew what would happen next. Dr. Ryan Clark had been studying ancient ruins on distant worlds for 15 years. His job was to dig up old artifacts and figure out what they meant. He enjoyed the quiet work, the careful brushing of dirt from old pottery, the slow process of understanding how people lived long ago. War and violence were things he read about in historical texts, not things that touched his daily life. That changed when the military transport landed outside his office at the University of New Geneva. 2 soldiers in dark uniforms walked into his laboratory without knocking. The woman spoke first. "Dr. Clark, I am Commander Lisa Bennett. You need to come with us immediately." Ryan looked up from the tablet he was reading. "I am sorry, but I am in the middle of cataloging some artifacts from the Centauri dig. Can this wait until tomorrow?" "No, it cannot." Commander Bennett held out a data pad with official seals. "This is a direct order from Admiral Sullivan. You have been assigned to a classified project of the highest importance." Ryan read the orders twice. They were real. "What kind of project needs an archaeologist? Are you planning to dig trenches?" Commander Bennett did not smile. "We are not digging anything up, Doctor. We are opening something that has been sealed for 6,000 years. The transport took them to a restricted area of the Swiss mountains that Ryan had never seen on any map. They flew over forests and valleys until they reached a metal door built into the side of a mountain. The door was huge, at least 50 meters tall and 30 meters wide. Strange symbols covered its surface. "What is this place?" Ryan asked as they landed. "The Prometheus Vault," Commander Bennett replied. "It was sealed in the year 2024, just after the Great Peace began. Your job is to help us open it and understand what is inside." They walked through several security checkpoints. Soldiers scanned Ryan's eyes, took his fingerprints, and made him speak into a voice recorder. The security was tighter than anything he had ever seen. The final checkpoint was different. Instead of soldiers, there was a single machine that looked like a medical scanner. Commander Bennett stepped into it first. The machine hummed for a moment, then a green light appeared. "Your turn, Doctor." Ryan stepped into the scanner. The machine hummed for much longer this time. He felt a strange tingling sensation, like tiny electric shocks running through his body. Then a blue light appeared, brighter than the green one. "Interesting," said a voice from the machine. "Subject shows strong genetic compatibility with archived protocols. Clearance granted." Commander Bennett looked surprised. "I have never seen a blue light before. Most people get green or red." The massive door began to open with a deep rumbling sound. As it moved, Ryan could see that it was not just one door, but many layers of different materials: metal, ceramic, some kind of crystal, and materials he did not recognize. Beyond the door was a corridor that stretched into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked, revealing walls covered with more of the strange symbols. The Air smelled old and metallic. Commander, what exactly are we looking for in here? Answers, Doctor. And weapons. The Voidborn attacks are spreading faster than our forces can respond. We need something that can fight them effectively. They reached a large chamber filled with computer terminals and storage devices. Most of the equipment looked incredibly old but well preserved. In the center of the room was a single chair facing a massive screen. Commander Bennett activated one of the terminals. The basic systems still work, but we cannot access the main database. The security protocols are too complex for our current technology. Ryan walked around the room, studying the symbols on the walls. They looked familiar, but he could not place where he had seen them before. Then he noticed something strange. Some of the symbols were moving, shifting, and changing as he watched. Commander, I think these are not just decorations. They are responding to something. Responding to what? Ryan placed his hand on one of the moving symbols. The moment his skin touched the wall, the entire room came alive. Lights flashed on everywhere. The massive screen began displaying images and text in languages Ryan had never seen but somehow understood. "Warning," said a voice from hidden speakers. "Unauthorized access detected. Please identify yourself." Ryan looked at Commander Bennett, who nodded for him to respond. "I am Dr. Ryan Clark, archaeologist, University of New Geneva." Genetic scan initiated. The tingling sensation returned, stronger this time. Scan complete. "Welcome, Dr. Clark. You have been identified as a direct descendant of the original Prometheus project team. Full access granted." The screen filled with files and documents. Ryan began reading, and what he found made his blood run cold. The Prometheus Vault was not just a storage facility. It was a complete archive of humanity's military history, including detailed plans for weapons and tactics that had been banned for 6,000 years. "Commander, you need to see this." They spent the next several hours reading through files that changed everything Ryan thought he knew about human history. Humanity had not joined the Galactic Federation as peaceful equals. They had been recruited specifically because they were the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. The files contained records of wars that had been erased from public history. Entire star systems destroyed by human weapons. Enemy. Species driven to extinction by human military tactics. The peace of the last 6,000 years had not been natural. It had been artificially maintained through genetic modifications and cultural programming designed to suppress humanity's natural aggressive instincts. "This cannot be true," Ryan said, staring at images of human soldiers using weapons that could crack planets. Commander Bennett was reading a different file. "It gets worse, Doctor. According to this, the Voidborn are not a new threat. They are the final revenge weapon of a species humanity destroyed 6,000 years ago. The attacks were programmed to begin when human military suppression reached its maximum level." Ryan found another file that made him sit down hard in the chair. "The Genesis Protocol. It is a system designed to reverse the genetic and cultural modifications, to wake up humanity's dormant military capabilities. Can it be activated?" "According to this, it already has been. The moment we opened this vault, automatic signals were sent to human colonies throughout the galaxy. The process has begun." Commander Bennett checked her communication device. "I am getting reports from Earth and the colonies. Medical facilities are reporting strange symptoms in the human population. Headaches, vivid dreams, sudden knowledge of things they never learned." Ryan continued reading. The Genesis Protocol was more than just removing genetic blocks. It would restore military instincts and knowledge that had been buried for millennia. Humans would remember how to fight, how to build weapons, how to wage war with ruthless efficiency. "Commander, if this works, we will not be the same species anymore. The humans who emerge from this process will be nothing like the peaceful people we have been for 6,000 years. Will they be able to stop the Voidborn?" Ryan looked at the files describing human military capabilities, ships that could move faster than light and strike from impossible angles, weapons that could turn enemy technology against itself, tactics so brutal and effective that other species had begged humanity to stop using them. "Yes," he said quietly, "but I am not sure the galaxy will thank us for it." Commander Bennett began copying files to portable storage devices. That is a problem for later, Doctor. Right now, we need to save everyone, even if it means becoming monsters again. As they worked, Ryan could feel something changing inside his own mind. New thoughts were appearing, knowledge he had never learned but somehow possessed. The Genesis Protocol was not just affecting other humans. It was affecting him too. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up. Captain Danny Wright had been managing the grain silos on New Kansas for 8 years. It was peaceful work on a peaceful world. The biggest problems he usually faced were equipment breakdowns or disputes over shipping schedules. The colonists were farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers. They grew food, raised families, and lived quiet lives under the endless sky. That morning started like any other. Danny was checking the moisture levels in Silo 7 when the headaches began. At first, it was just a dull pain behind his eyes. Then came the dreams while he was still awake. Flashes of images he had never seen before. Ships moving in formation through space. Soldiers advancing across alien landscapes. Weapons firing with deadly precision. Captain Wright? His assistant, Maria Santos, was standing in the doorway of the silo control room. She looked pale and confused. Are you feeling strange today? Danny rubbed his forehead. Just a headache. You? I keep seeing things that are not there. Maps of star systems I have never visited. Battle plans for fighting enemies I have never heard of. Maria sat down heavily in a chair. What is happening to us? Before Danny could answer, his communication device beeped with an emergency message from the colonial government. All humans were requested to report to the medical centers immediately for evaluation. Similar requests were coming from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Danny and Maria drove to the medical center in New Geneva City, the largest town on New Kansas. The streets were full of confused and frightened people. At the medical center, Dr. Helen Foster was trying to examine dozens of humans who all reported the same symptoms. I have never seen anything like this, Dr. Foster told Danny when it was his turn for examination. Brain scans show massive activity in areas that are normally dormant. It is as if entire sections of your minds are waking up after being asleep. Is it dangerous? I do not know. But the knowledge appearing in people's heads is very specific. Military tactics, weapon designs, strategic planning, things that no civilian should know. Danny left the medical center more confused than when he arrived. As he walked back to his vehicle, he noticed something different about the other humans on the street. They were moving differently. Their eyes were scanning their surroundings like they were looking for threats. Their posture was straighter, more alert. When he got home, Danny found his neighbor Tom Bradley standing in his yard staring at the sky. Tom was a corn farmer who had never shown interest in anything beyond his crops. Tom, you okay? Tom did not look away from the sky. They will come from the northwest. 3 ships, moving in a delta formation. They will try to take out our communication array first. What are you talking about? The attack pattern. It is obvious once you think about it. Tom finally looked at Danny, and his eyes were different, colder, more calculating. We need to set up defensive positions around the communications tower, and we need to do it now. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. Tom was right, and Danny knew it even though he could not explain how. The knowledge was just there in his mind, as if it had always been there. Over the next few days, the changes accelerated. Farmers began organizing into military units without being ordered to do so. Engineers started modifying agricultural equipment into weapons. Teachers began instructing children in tactical thinking instead of regular lessons. The colonial government tried to maintain order, but they were changing too. Governor Lisa Chen, who had spent her career negotiating trade agreements, suddenly began issuing orders that sounded like military commands. She established patrol schedules, set up supply lines, and began fortifying the major settlements. Danny found himself appointed as the military commander for the Northern Agricultural District. He had never held a military rank in his life, but somehow he knew exactly what to do. The knowledge came to him naturally, as if he had been born with it. On the 4th day after the changes began, The first void-born ships appeared in New Kansas, space. Danny was in the newly established command center when the alert came through. 3 dark ships, just as Tom had predicted, moving in delta formation toward the planet. They were larger than any human vessel Danny had ever seen, and they moved with an unnatural smoothness. "All units, this is command." Danny spoke into the communication array. "Enemy contact confirmed. Defensive positions now." The response was immediate and coordinated. Humans across the planet moved to prepared positions with military precision. Modified farming equipment emerged from hidden locations. What had been a peaceful agricultural world an hour before was now a fortress ready for war. The void-born ships began their attack by targeting the orbital communication satellites, exactly as predicted. But the humans were ready. Hidden missile batteries, built from mining equipment and fertilizer supplies, fired at the attacking ships. The battle lasted 6 hours. The void-born ships were more advanced than anything the humans had, but the humans fought with a coordination and ruthlessness that surprised even themselves. They used tactics that seemed to come from nowhere, anticipating enemy moves before they happened. When it was over, 2 void-born ships were destroyed, and the third was badly damaged as it retreated. The humans had lost some equipment and a few people were injured, but the planet was safe. Danny stood in the command center afterward, trying to understand what had happened. A week ago, he had been a simple farmer. Now he had commanded a planetary defense that defeated enemies from space. Ambassador Helen Foster arrived on New Kansas 3 days after the battle. She was traveling between human colonies, trying to understand the changes happening to her species. She met with Danny and the other new military leaders in the colonial government building. "What you accomplished here is remarkable," she told them. "But it is also frightening. The other species in the Federation are watching what humans are becoming, and they are scared." "Scared of what?" asked Governor Chen. "Scared of you. In 1 week, you have transformed from peaceful farmers into a military force that defeated technology far superior to your own. You did it instinctively, without training or preparation. That kind of capability does not appear overnight unless it was already there, waiting." Danny understood what she meant. The knowledge and skills they were displaying had not been learned. They had been remembered. Hidden somewhere in human genetics was the memory of being warriors, and something had awakened it. "The Genesis Protocol," said Governor Chen quietly. "I have been receiving reports from Earth about an ancient vault that was opened. It contained systems designed to reverse genetic modifications that had been suppressing human military instincts." "Ambassador," Foster nodded grimly. "The Federation Council is meeting in emergency session. Some species are demanding that humanity be quarantined until the changes can be reversed. Others are arguing that awakened humans are the only hope of stopping the void-born threat." "What do you think will happen?" Danny asked. "I think the galaxy is about to learn why humanity was recruited into the Federation in the first place, and I think many species are going to wish we had stayed asleep." As if to prove her point, reports began coming in of human victories against void-born forces throughout the galaxy. Humans who had never seen combat were defeating enemies that had overwhelmed professional military forces. The transformation was happening everywhere, and it was accelerating. The sleeping giant was not just stirring anymore. It was wide awake, and it remembered exactly how to fight. Major Susan Hayes stood in the ruins of the void-born command ship, watching her soldiers search through the twisted metal. 3 days ago, she had been Lieutenant Hayes, a supply officer who had never fired a weapon in combat. Now she was leading assault teams through enemy vessels with skills she did not remember learning. The transformation had been sudden and complete. One morning she woke up knowing how to read enemy ship layouts, how to predict ambush points, how to move through hostile territory without being detected. The knowledge felt natural, like remembering how to ride a bicycle after years of not doing it. "Major, you need to see this," called Sergeant Mike Torres from the forward section of the wrecked ship. He was standing beside a strange device that looked like a mix of computer and organic tissue. "I think this is some kind of memory core." Susan walked over to examine the device. As soon as she got close, information began flowing into her mind. Not words or images, but pure data about voidborne tactics, ship construction, and strategic planning. She jerked back from the device, breathing hard. "What did you learn?" Torres asked. "They are not just machines. They are hybrids. Part technology, part something else." Susan stared at the device with new understanding. "And they were created specifically to fight humans." Back on Earth, Dr. Ryan Clark was making his own disturbing discoveries in the Prometheus Vault. The deeper he dug into the archived files, the more questions arose about humanity's true history. Commander Lisa Bennett worked beside him, both of them struggling to understand the implications of what they were finding. "Look at this," Ryan said, pointing to a file on his screen. The Galactic Federation was not formed to promote peace. It was formed to contain humanity after we nearly destroyed half the galaxy. The file contained records of something called the Architect War, fought 6,000 years ago. According to the documents, humanity had been locked in a brutal conflict with a species called the Architects, who believed that organic life was inferior to artificial intelligence. The Architects created the first voidborne prototypes as weapons against us, Lisa read from another file. But humanity developed countermeasures that were so effective, we did not just defeat the Architects, we erased them completely. Ryan found video records from the final battle of the Architect War. The footage showed human ships using weapons that could unmake matter at the atomic level. Entire enemy fleets simply ceased to exist when hit by human weapons. Enemy planets were stripped down to their cores and rebuilt as human military bases. "We did not just win the war," Ryan said quietly. "We committed genocide." "And then what happened?" Ryan opened the next set of files. "The other species in the galaxy were terrified of us. They offered us membership in a new federation, but only if we agreed to genetic modification that would suppress our military instincts. We accepted because we were horrified by what we had become." The files showed the process of human transformation. Advanced genetic engineering that reduced aggression, enhanced empathy, and created psychological blocks against violence. The modifications were so complete that within a few generations, humans had no memory of their warlike past. But the Architects had one final weapon, Lisa discovered in the deepest archive files. A delayed activation system in the Voidborn. If humanity was ever suppressed to the point where we forgot how to fight, the Voidborn would awaken and finish what the Architects started. Meanwhile, Admiral Jack Cooper was leading the first major human fleet action in 6,000 years. His ships moved through space with deadly precision, using tactics that no living being had seen before. The Voidborn forces they encountered were prepared for conventional Federation military doctrine, not for the brutal efficiency of awakened humanity. "Target their command vessels first," Cooper ordered his fleet. "Cut off their coordination, then surround and destroy them systematically." The battle was over in 20 minutes. 12 Voidborn ships destroyed, 0 human losses. But the victory came at a cost that troubled Cooper. His crews had fought with a cold ruthlessness that scared even him. There had been no mercy, no attempt to offer surrender terms, no consideration for prisoners. After the battle, Cooper received a communication from the Federation Council. The alien representatives looked frightened as they appeared on his screen. "Admiral." "Cooper," said the Altarian delegate, "we are concerned about the methods your forces are using. The complete destruction of enemy forces without offering terms of surrender violates Federation military protocols." Cooper stared at the delegate with eyes that had grown cold over the past week. "The Voidborn do not take prisoners. They convert all organic matter into resources for their expansion. Offering them mercy is offering them victory. But surely there must be some way to negotiate. There is no negotiation with enemies who want to consume your entire species." Cooper cut him off. "This is total war, and total war requires total commitment." The communication ended with the delegates looking even more frightened than before. Cooper understood their fear. The humans they had known for millennia were disappearing, replaced by beings who understood warfare at a level that peaceful species could not comprehend. On the industrial world of New Detroit, General Paul Martinez was overseeing the conversion of civilian manufacturing to military production. Factories that had been making consumer goods were now producing weapons that had not been seen in the galaxy for 6,000 years. "The molecular disruptor production line is ready," reported his chief engineer, Captain Amy Rodriguez. "We can begin mass production within the week." Martinez studied the weapon specifications on his tablet. The molecular disruptor could break down enemy ships at the atomic level, turning matter into energy. It was the same type of weapon humans had used to defeat the architects. "Begin production immediately, and start work on the quantum torpedoes." "Sir, the Federation has banned quantum weapons." "The Federation has never faced an enemy like the Voidborn," Martinez replied. "Their rules were made for a peaceful galaxy. We are no longer living in a peaceful galaxy." As weapons production ramped up across human space, disturbing reports came in from Federation observers. Humans were not just building weapons, they were building weapons specifically designed to ensure complete victory with no possibility of enemy survival or recovery. Dr. Foster sent a report to the Federation Council that summarized the situation. "The humans are not just defending themselves, they are preparing to wage a war of extinction. Based on their historical records, they will not stop until every trace of Voidborn technology is destroyed and every possibility of its return is eliminated." The report continued. "The question the Council must answer is this: do we allow humanity to become monsters again in order to save the galaxy, or do we try to stop them and face the Voidborn ourselves?" But the decision was being taken out of the Federation's hands. Across human space, the transformation was accelerating. Peaceful. Farmers, teachers, and engineers were becoming strategic planners, weapons designers, and military commanders. The genetic modifications that had kept humanity peaceful for 6,000 years were breaking down completely. Susan Hayes, now promoted to colonel after her third successful assault on Voidborn positions, received new orders to lead a strike, forced to the architect ruins. Intelligence suggested that the main Voidborn control systems were hidden there, in the remains of their creator's homeworld. As she prepared for the mission, Susan realized that she was no longer the same person who had woken up a week ago as a supply officer. The peaceful human who had joined the Federation military to help with logistics and rescue operations was gone. In her place was someone who understood that some enemies could only be stopped through complete destruction. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had tried to forget, that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to wage war so terrible that no one would ever want to fight again. Commander Tony Nelson crouched in the darkness of the Voidborn hive ship, listening to the strange sounds echoing through the metal corridors. His team of 12 soldiers moved silently behind him, their weapons ready. 2 weeks ago, these soldiers had been shopkeepers, mechanics, and office workers. Now they were the most feared Special Forces unit in the galaxy. The mission was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. They had to penetrate the central mind of a Voidborn hive and plant a virus that would spread through the entire network. No one had ever survived such a mission before, but human tactics had changed everything. "Remember," Tony whispered into his communication device, "the Voidborn think like machines. They calculate probabilities and choose optimal solutions. But we think like humans. We do things that make no logical sense, and that confuses them." The team moved deeper into the ship, avoiding the main corridors, and using maintenance shafts that the Voidborn had not properly defended. The enemy had adapted to conventional Federation tactics, but they could not adapt to the unpredictable nature of human warfare. When they reached the central chamber, Tony saw the Voidborn collective mind for the first time. It was a massive sphere of metal and organic tissue, pulsing with energy and connected to thousands of cables. The sight should have been terrifying, but Tony felt only cold determination. "Plant the virus," he ordered, "and set the charges." As his team worked, Tony thought about how much he had changed. Before the awakening, he had been a maintenance supervisor at a water treatment plant. He had never hurt anyone in his life. Now he was preparing to commit an act that would destroy millions of Voidborn units across multiple star systems. The virus would not just disable the enemy ships, it would turn their own technology against them, making their weapons fire on each other and their navigation systems guide them into stars. It was a weapon of pure destruction, designed to cause maximum chaos and fear. Captain Amy Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the human battleship Retribution, watching enemy formations on her tactical display. Her ship was one of 50 in the largest human fleet assembled since the Architect War. They were moving toward the Voidborn stronghold in the Cygnus sector, where the enemy had gathered over 1,000 ships. The Federation admirals had declared the mission impossible. The Voidborn had too many ships, too much firepower, and the advantage of fighting in their own territory. But Amy knew something the Federation did not understand. Human warfare was not about having superior numbers or better technology. It was about being willing to do whatever was necessary to win. All ships, this is Rodriguez. She spoke into the fleet communication system. Execute Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was a human invention that no other species would have considered. The human fleet would split into small groups and attack from impossible angles, using tactics that prioritized psychological impact over tactical advantage. They would make the enemy afraid, and fear was a weapon more powerful than any gun. The battle began with human ships appearing throughout the Voidborn formation, striking at random targets before disappearing again. The Voidborn tried to coordinate their response, but every time they moved to counter one attack, 3 more would hit them from different directions. Amy watched the tactical display as enemy ships began firing on each other, confused by the human virus that Tony Nelson's team had planted. The Voidborn collective mind was breaking down, unable to process the chaos that human tactics had created. On Earth, General Paul Martinez was coordinating what he called the final solution. It was a plan so brutal that even he sometimes questioned whether it was necessary. But the Voidborn had given humanity no choice. They could not be reasoned with, negotiated with, or defeated through conventional means. Status report on the Stellar Conversion Project, he asked his chief scientist, Dr. Sarah Kim. The weaponized stars are ready, General. We can trigger supernovas in 12 systems simultaneously, creating a barrier of radiation that no Voidborn ship can cross. Martinez nodded grimly. The plan would destroy 12 star systems, including any planets or stations they contained. It was genocide on a scale that made the Architect War look small, but it would also create an impassable wall that would trap the remaining Voidborn in a small section of the galaxy, where they could be hunted down and destroyed systematically. What about the Federation response? They are threatening to declare war on humanity if we proceed, Dr. Kim reported. Several species have begun moving their fleets to defensive positions around their home systems. Let them come, Martinez said coldly. If they want to protect enemies who would consume their entire species, they can face the consequences. The transformation of humanity was now complete. In 3 weeks, they had gone from peaceful farmers and shopkeepers to the most feared military force in galactic history. But the cost was becoming clear. The humans emerging from this war would be nothing like the ones who had entered it. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the Federation Council chamber, facing representatives from over 200 species. Their fear was obvious as they looked at her. She no longer resembled the diplomatic officer who had attended these meetings for years. Her eyes were cold, her posture rigid, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had watched worlds burn. The human military campaign against the Voidborn has been completely successful, she reported. Enemy forces have been reduced by 80%. Their command structure has been destroyed. Their ability to reproduce has been eliminated. And the cost? Asked the Centaurian delegate. 17 star systems have been sterilized. 300 billion Voidborn units have been destroyed. All Voidborn technology has been reduced to base elements to prevent any possibility of reconstruction. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, the Altarian delegate spoke. Admiral Sullivan, the Federation is grateful for humanity's sacrifice in defeating the Voidborn threat. However, we must address the concern that humanity has itself become a threat to galactic peace. Sullivan stared at the delegate with eyes that had seen too much war. Are you threatening us? We are expressing concern about the methods you have used. The complete destruction of enemy populations, the weaponization of stars, the creation of weapons banned by every civilized species. These actions suggest that humanity has reverted to its pre-Federation nature. "You asked us to save the galaxy," Sullivan replied. "We did. The methods we used were the only ones that would work against an enemy like the Voidborn. If you find our methods disturbing, perhaps you should have found another solution yourselves. What happens now? Will humanity return to its peaceful ways?" Sullivan was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Around her, she could feel the presence of other humans who had been transformed by the war. They were no longer the species that had joined the Federation 6,000 years ago. They were something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "That depends," she said finally, "on whether the galaxy gives us a reason to remain peaceful." The threat was clear, and every delegate in the chamber understood it. Humanity had awakened from its long sleep, and the galaxy would never be the same. The question now was whether the other species could live with what they had helped create, or whether they would force humanity to demonstrate once again why they had been feared in the first place. In the silence that followed, everyone understood that the real war was just beginning. Colonel Tony Nelson stood at the edge of the Architect ruins, staring at the massive structure that had been hidden beneath the surface of the dead world for 6,000 years. The building was enormous, stretching for kilometers in every direction, its dark metal surface covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "This is it," Dr. Ryan Clark said, checking his scanner readings. "The source of the Voidborn control signals. Everything they have built, every ship they have created, every attack they have launched, it all connects back to this place." The strike team consisted of 50 humans, all volunteers for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. The Architect ruins were defended by the most advanced Voidborn units ever created, machines that had been waiting in the darkness for 6,000 years for this moment. "Remember the plan?" Tony addressed his team. "We get Dr. Clark to the central control chamber. He activates the shutdown sequence hidden in human genetic memory. The rest of us make sure he has time to complete the process." Captain Amy Rodriguez checked her weapon one final time. "What if the shutdown sequence does not work? Then we detonate the antimatter charges and take this whole facility with us," Tony replied. "Either way, the Voidborn threat ends today." They entered the ruins through a breach created by orbital bombardment. The corridors inside were filled with a strange energy that made their skin crawl and their minds feel fuzzy. This was technology, so advanced it was almost like magic, created by a species that had nearly conquered the galaxy before humanity stopped them. The Voidborn defenders came at them in waves. These were not the simple combat units they had faced before. These machines moved like living creatures, adapting and learning with each attack. They used weapons that bent space and time, creating impossible angles of attack that defied physics. But the humans had learned to fight impossible enemies. They used tactics that made no sense, strategies that violated every rule of warfare, methods that worked precisely because they should not work. When the Voidborn predicted their moves, the humans did something completely different. When logic suggested one approach, they chose another. "Left corridor," Tony shouted as they advanced through the facility. "Move like we discussed." The team split up and attacked from 5 directions at once, creating chaos that the Voidborn could not process. In the confusion, they carved a path deeper into the ruins, leaving a trail of destroyed machines behind them. Dr. Clark ran beside them, his mind filled with knowledge that was not his own. The genetic memories awakened by the Genesis Protocol included information about this place, about the final battle of the Architect War, about the shutdown codes hidden in human DNA for 6,000 years. They reached the central chamber after 3 hours of fighting. Half the strike team was dead, and the survivors were running low on ammunition. But they had made it. The chamber was massive, its walls covered with crystalline structures that pulsed with energy. In the center stood a pillar of pure darkness that seemed to absorb light and sound. This was the Architect Master Control, the source of all Voidborn commands. "I need 5 minutes," Dr. Clark said, connecting his scanner to the control pillar. "The shutdown sequence is complex. If I make a mistake, it will trigger a self-destruct that will destroy half this solar system." "You will have your 5 minutes," Tony promised. The final wave of void-born defenders poured into the chamber. These were the Architect Guardians, machines that had been protecting this place since the original war. They were larger than buildings, armed with weapons that could unmake matter, and driven by an intelligence that bordered on godlike. The remaining humans spread out around the chamber, using every trick they had learned, every tactic that had emerged from their awakened genetic memory. They fought not to win, but to buy time. They fought knowing they would all die, but that their deaths would end the threat forever. Amy Rodriguez held her position at the eastern entrance, her rifle firing continuously at machines that seemed to absorb her shots without damage. How much longer, Doctor? 3 minutes, Clark called back. His hands moved over the control interface, guided by instincts buried in his genes. The shutdown sequence was not just a program. It was a genetic key that only humans could use, a final safeguard created by their ancestors to ensure the architects could never return. Tony watched his soldiers fall one by one. These brave men and women had been ordinary civilians a month ago. Now they were dying to save a galaxy that feared them. The irony was not lost on him. Humanity had become monsters to defeat monsters, and the galaxy would never forgive them for it. 1 minute, Clark announced. The control pillar was responding to his commands, its dark surface beginning to crack and spark. Throughout the galaxy, void-born ships were stopping in space as their connection to the master control was severed. The last Guardian reached the control pillar just as Dr. Clark completed the shutdown sequence. The machine's weapon fired, but Clark had already pressed the final command. Light exploded from the pillar, washing over the chamber and racing outward at impossible speed. Across the galaxy, every void-born unit shut down simultaneously. Ships fell silent in space. Construction facilities stopped building. The vast network that had threatened to consume all organic life simply ceased to exist. But the price had been paid. Dr. Clark was dead, killed by the Guardian's final shot. Tony and his remaining soldiers had seconds before the facility's self-destruct activated. They had saved the galaxy, but they would not live to see it. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan received the final transmission from the strike team. The Voidborn were finished. The threat that had existed for 6,000 years was finally over. But as she looked at the reports flooding in from across human space, she realized that the real challenge was just beginning. The humans who had awakened to fight this war could not go back to sleep. The genetic modifications that had kept them peaceful were permanently broken. They were now a species of warriors in a galaxy that no longer needed warriors. Admiral, Commander Lisa Bennett approached her desk with a data pad. The Federation Council is demanding that we submit to new genetic modifications to suppress our military capabilities. They want to put us back to sleep. Sullivan laughed, but there was no humor in it. And if we refuse? They are threatening a coalition war against humanity. 200 species united against us. Sullivan stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Earth sky. Let them come. We defeated the Voidborn in 3 weeks. How long do you think it would take us to defeat the Federation? Admiral, surely we do not want another war. No, we do not want another war. But we will not accept slavery either. Sullivan turned back to Bennett. Send a message to all human colonies. Tell them about the Federation's ultimatum. Let every human choose for themselves. The response came back within hours. Humanity's answer was unanimous and clear. They would not submit to genetic modification. They would not return to being pets in the Federation's peaceful zoo. They had remembered what they were, and they would never forget again. But they also would not become conquerors. Admiral Sullivan proposed a third option to the Federation Council. Humanity would establish itself as the galaxy's guardians, the hidden sword that would only emerge when peaceful species faced threats they could not handle themselves. We will withdraw from Federation space, she told the assembled delegates. We will establish our own territory and govern ourselves. But when another threat like the Voidborn emerges, and it will emerge, you will call for us, and we will answer. Because that is what we are now, the galaxy's last resort. The Federation accepted the proposal because they had no choice. humanity, was too powerful to defeat and too dangerous to ignore. They would have their peace, but it would be a peace guaranteed by the existence of a species that could wage war with total efficiency. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the bridge of his new flagship watching the stars. His peaceful exploration days were over. He was now part of humanity's eternal watch, ready to wake the sleeping giant whenever the galaxy needed its protection. The long peace was over, but a new kind of peace had begun. A peace maintained not through ignorance of war, but through the knowledge that some species were willing to become monsters to protect those who could not protect themselves. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. They were the guardians in the darkness, the sword that waited in silence, the reminder that some things were worth fighting for no matter the cost. The galaxy would sleep peacefully, knowing that humanity was watching.